It's time for the Texas Perspective on current news and events. A man who calls it like he sees it, without the normal political correctness you may have grown comfortable with. This show is not for the faint of heart or easily offended. Chances are you will learn something and along the way get to hear some great music from bands you may have missed. The doctor is in, and he will see you now.
Well, I guess we better get on with it.
Well, good morning, Beaumont. Hey, it's Saturday, and that means it's the Saturday show. We're going to be here for a full hour today. We're going to bring you lots of really interesting information. So please like and share if you're watching this on YouTube or Rumble. Please leave your comments. Comments are worth gold. I appreciate that very much. Well, this is really interesting. You know this girl. Her name is Laura Ingraham. And she decided to go out and get some man on the street interviews, as it were, or woman on the street interviews. And it's an open secret that every conservative knows, and the leftist, Marxist, fake news media refuses to report on. But Laura Ingraham was in Minneapolis reporting outside the Bishop Henry Whipple Federal Building, and she has a leftist protester just giving her a hard time, repeatedly yelling, "Shame, shame." And Laura Ingraham said, "Do you have a job?" And without even thinking, the leftist responded, "I'm getting paid right now." So there you have it. We already knew this. These people are getting paid to be there. This is why when they do cell phone tracking, they discover a number of cell phones that show up at every protest everywhere all across the United States. So this is what it is. But the accidental admission confirms what I have been reporting, what the Gateway Pundit has reported for years, whether it's Antifa riots or organized harassment of public officials, there is big money behind all this chaos. This is an attack upon the republic that is the United States. Representative Anna Paulina Luna from Florida announced that her motion to subpoena Marxist billionaire Neville Roy Singham has passed the House Oversight Committee unanimously with bipartisan support. As you know, Mr. Neville Roy Singham lives in China. He's an American, but he lives in China, and he's working with the Chinese military over there. According to the evidence presented by the committee, Singham is the mastermind behind the massive dark money network that's funneling literally hundreds of millions of dollars into these leftist, Marxist U.S. nonprofits, and dare I say, even the media. So anyway, at least we finally got the admission. Yes, I'm getting paid right now. Now this.
Because you're good, girls are gonna go bad. I'm gonna be the swingin'est swinger you've ever had. If you like them painted up, powdered up, then you ought to be glad. 'Cause you're good, girls gonna go bad.
Meanwhile, the anti-American media and their willing accomplices in the public continue to use the death of Renee Nicole Good, who was very bad, to fuel their own anti-ICE narrative. Once again, Renee Nicole Good was pretending to be the guy in a homosexual relationship. You know, they said that they had the discussion, and her partner said, "Let me be frank." And she said, "No, let me be frank." So anyway, that's how it worked. And how many times are we going to see these homosexual, mentally ill people involved in a crime? It just seems to go on and on and on. I mean, don't forget, the first alleged assassin for Donald Trump was a homosexual. The assassin for Charlie Kirk was a homosexual. At some point in time, we got to quit calling this cute and start recognizing it for what it is. Well, anyway, Miss Good, if you didn't know, she blocked the street so that the ICE vehicles could not go down the street. She actually pulled her car sideways and blocked the street. No traffic flowing in either direction. The lead ICE agent got out of his car, walked up to hers, and said, "You need to move out of here." And she gave him some guff, and her girlfriend gave him some guff. And so he said, "Step out of the vehicle." Well, instead of stepping out of the vehicle, of course, she immediately hit the gas and tried to run over the guy that was in front of her. And she got what she deserved. But, well, the mainstream leftist Marxist media and their willing accomplices in government like Tampon Tim Waltz and Mayor Jacob Fry, they have rushed to make her a martyr. But it's just not doing really good because they interviewed one of her relatives, Joseph Macklin. He's the former brother-in-law, and he suggested that Good had no business being there in the first place. She said she had no reason to be there, in my opinion. This has nothing to do with her. She shouldn't have been in the way. She had nothing to do with the ICE agents or immigration, so she just shouldn't have been there. She should have minded her own business. Miss Good had 3 children, including a 6-year-old son that she shared with his brother Tim Macklin Jr., an Air Force veteran who tragically died in 2023. Can you imagine what life is like for these kids? The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who is not only very astute, she's also kind of cute, and President Trump have stood firmly behind the agents, describing the incident as what it was, self-defense. DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin stated that Good had been stalking and impeding ICE's work throughout the day before eventually attempting to run over the officer with her SUV. This is all part of a group called ICE Watch. It's an alliance of radicalized anti-American activists dedicated to preventing America from enforcing the law. These guys never met a criminal they didn't love. They want every illegal alien gang member to be here beating up on people, killing people. So anyway, Good, who moved there last year, linked up with the anti-American activist through her 6-year-old son's woke charter school, which boasts that it puts social justice first, and they love to involve kids in political and social activism. You know, my son teaches at a charter school, but it's radically different from this one. Meanwhile, an ICE officer fearing for his life and the lives of his fellow law enforcement did the right thing. He fired the defensive shots, and he solved the problem for a lot of people. But it just comes down to this. Renee Nicole Good wasn't good at all. She was a very bad girl. She was mentally ill. What she really needed was Jesus. And at the very least, she needed some mental health counseling, but wasn't getting it. Anyway, moving right along. On another more intelligent note, Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling issued a blistering warning to all the anti-American leftists out there. He said, if you play stupid games with law enforcement, you're going to win stupid prizes. Yeah. At a press conference on Monday, Snelling forcefully rejected social media posts alleging that Chicago police had refused to help agents responding to violent situations last week. Instead, he defended the role of federal law enforcement and clarified that attacks against them, whether local, state, or federal, constitute deadly force and will legitimately trigger an armed defensive response. Snelling, who has not spoken about federal deployment in the city or across Illinois, said he sought to stay out of politics. But after hearing the claims, his officers did not respond to calls for service. He felt it was necessary to put all of those rumors to rest. He said, my leadership team are not political pawns. Their lives are too important to play politics. These men and women face danger every single day. It's not a game, not a joke. This is our city, and we still have a responsibility to maintain safety and calm in our city. Snelling said none of his officers were seriously injured by the tear gas, and he added that he's spoken with federal leadership about the incidents and that the feds were very concerned about the officers. Despite those discussions, the superintendent maintained that his department abides by the Illinois Trust Act, which restricts law enforcement, including sheriffs, from cooperating with federal immigration agents, and they do not collect or share residents' immigration status. In other words, even though they're allegedly law enforcement, they're doing their best to protect people that are here breaking the law, people that are stealing your jobs, stealing your house, driving down your wages while driving up the cost of rent. Snelling laid out in reality the situation for those who think they can harass federal agents with impunity. He specifically addressed the dangerous tactic of boxing in and ramming law enforcement vehicles. He said they are agents of law enforcement, and if you box them in, it's reasonable for them to believe they're being ambushed, and this could end up in a deadly situation. It's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. He said, do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that, and you're putting yourself in danger. Following law enforcement agents around raises the question, what are you planning to do? It's also reasonable for them to believe that eventually you will harm them. So if you ram any vehicle, and especially one that contains law enforcement agents, local, state, federal, or county, and you do this intentionally, that is considered use of deadly force. And deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. And if you plow into that vehicle, you are using deadly force. And you're probably gonna, well, like you said at the beginning, if you're gonna play stupid games, you're gonna get stupid prizes. Fool around and find out. FAFO. In other news, wokeness is not being embraced by many corporations despite individual franchises trying to ramp up their activism in Minnesota. USA Today reported that Hilton Hotels canceled a franchise's status in Minneapolis because they refused rooms to the Department of Homeland Security agents. A separate incident occurred at a Marriott hotel where an employee doxed ICE agents and they fired him. As it turns out, McDonald's isn't putting up with it either. Commentator Benny Johnson posted a screenshot of a letter at a McDonald's franchise saying ICE was not allowed inside. McDonald's swiftly commented in reaction to the incident, "We're in touch with the owner-operator of this franchise restaurant, and we have confirmed that this flyer was posted without approval, and it has since been taken down." So there's the good news. Minneapolis McDonald's has a security guard placed outside to make sure no ICE agents go in. Well, Johnson included a video from the location in question where the security guard was standing outside, along with a notice on the window. And at the end of the day, he said, "This is private property. You can't just break the law because you're a federal agent." When asked about who posted the flyer, the guard said, "I'm not sure, but it's there." So when asked how the franchise planned to enforce this decision, she said, "Well, they read the sign." It looks like McDonald's read the sign and they weren't happy about it. Woke capitalism just doesn't play like it used to. A lot of the brands are understanding how detrimental it can be to their business because, let's face it, the overwhelming majority of Americans, this includes people that used to be Democrats, support what Donald Trump is doing. Right now, support for the Democrat Party is somewhere around 13%. So that should tell you something. So just like the boycott of Bud Light, yeah, it's making a difference. You see, businesses want to make money, and they listen to the people that pay them. And let's face it, there's a whole lot more conservatives out there willing to spend money in your place than there are leftist, Marxist, anti-American, homosexual activists. Hey, be right back.
Please return to the Doc Greene Show. This is Marvin the Martian. When you miss it, you make me very, very angry.
I told you yesterday that I was going to bring you some jaw-dropping stuff today. Well, here it is, Brian Maxwell, and you can find him on YouTube. He is really excellent. And this is what the Democrats fear most. You see, Brian Maxwell is just one of millions of black men who have left the Democrat Party and have become Republicans. So check this out. I recommend you take notes. And of course, you can always catch it up on my Rumble channel and my YouTube channel if you need to come back to it.
The documents contain emails, allegedly, from the senior vice president of the George Soros Open Society Foundation. He quotes a Clinton campaign advisor saying, quote, "It will be a long-term affair and to demonize Putin and Trump," and adds that, quote, "Later, the FBI will put more oil into the fire," unquote. Other emails reveal Hillary Clinton approved the idea of tying Trump and Russia to election interference. And that was a scheme hoping the allegations would distract people from her own email scandal. These documents provide clear evidence that Hillary Clinton's campaign was behind the Russia hoax and that the FBI knew what the Clinton team was up to, acknowledging that the info they were receiving about the Trump campaign may have come from the Clinton camp. Despite this, the Obama intel community forged ahead with the 2017 assessment, concluding that Russia aspired to help Trump win the election.
Patriots, this video is extremely important because President Trump, for the last week or so, has been dropping video after video after video exposing the election fraud from 2020. Now, you may be saying, Brian, it's 2026. Why does 2020 matter? And it's very important that you listen to what I'm about to say. 2024 almost was a repeat of 2020. It just wasn't made public. I saw a recent report from a former DOJ official that worked with Elon Musk and his team in 2024 when they got notification that a facility in Belgrade that was attempting to hack into the systems and the network of the 2024 election between Trump and Kamala Harris. When they found it out, I learned something new because they found it out and they did get help from some really, really high level security networking companies and whatnot. And they were able through the wires to melt the computers of the hackers in Belgrade. They were actually on the ground over there. They had people on the ground there, but they were watching it from the United States. Elon Musk and a number of people blocking them from hacking into the systems and flipping the election like they did previously. Now, if you watched any of my other videos and you felt like they were informative and they were good, I highly assure you, you definitely want to watch this one because history repeats itself if we don't pay attention. And this is not news reports that I'm about to bring to you. These are words from the actual witnesses. We got video clips of the trucks. Wait till you see it. We even got clips of ballot stuffers, not the ones we saw with Ruby Freeman. This is one where CNN mistakenly exposed somebody stuffing a ballot while they were doing the report. So this video, I'm not going to do too much talking. Going to be a lot of video clips, but for the first few minutes, I am going to guide you through the clips that we're going to be looking at. So in this first clip, we got Sidney Powell. Now, you may not be familiar with who Sidney Powell is, but Sidney Powell was a part of Trump's first administration's team. And she also fell victim to Fannie Willis and her prosecutions in Fulton County, Georgia. Sidney Powell ended up taking a plea and accepting a minor count to avoid jail time. She has since been vindicated with the information that has come out of Fulton County, which was the premise for all of these prosecutions that took place, that President Trump interfered with the 2020 election. We've also got fragments of that phone call that President Trump made to the electors. And when you hear it, your jaw's going to drop, because when you hear what it is that he's saying versus what they tried to say that he did, you see now why the Most High God stepped in and cleared the path for President Trump to make America first. So check this clip out of Sidney Powell.
The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election after one constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out. We have one very strong witness who has explained how it all works. His affidavit is attached to the pleadings of Lynn Wood in the lawsuit he filed in Georgia. It is a stunning, detailed affidavit because he was with Hugo Chavez while he was being briefed on how it worked. He was with Hugo Chavez when he saw it operate to make sure the election came out his way. That was the express purpose for creating this software. He has seen it operate, and as soon as he saw the multiple states shut down the voting on the night of the election, he knew the same thing was happening here.
Now, you heard her talk about the system shutting down and it being started and funded by Hugo Chavez, who gave $100 million to the Smartmatic company. Now, Smartmatic and Dominion are tied together. Dominion sued Fox News, who had did a report on how the Dominion voting machines weren't working right and there was potential fraud going on. They sued Fox News for $1 billion, if you remember that case. And a part of that deal was Tucker Carlson being fired from the network because he was the one that broke the story. The only problem is now we have actual video proof of the Dominion Smartmatic machines and the technology on the inside that made it to how they were able to hack into our elections, and how they're going to try it again unless we block it and we support the president's movement on paper ballots. But check this out.
Initiated by a court order, the Michigan investigation team obtained forensic access to a DS-200 tabulator, the machine that counts the votes. A Telit 4G wireless chip manufactured in Taiwan was discovered embedded into the motherboard. The voting machine tapes clearly indicate modem engagement and transmission of election data. Some of the anomalies that we noticed in the 2020 general elections, that 5 key states all stopped counting at a certain time in these key battleground states. These were all where the software, Dominion machines, ESNS machines were used, the Smartmatic, the GEMS software. So when the vote stopped counting, and this has been noted in other countries as well, President Trump was significantly ahead. When reporting and counting resumed, there was a massive spike occurred that favored Joe Biden.
Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg, okay? So you saw that. Now I want you to listen to this election worker in Michigan as she exposes what took place in Detroit, where 10,000 ballots had the exact same bubble fill and the same exact write-ins, which is statistically impossible for 10,000 people to fill their bubble in the exact same, write in the name of the candidate the exact same way. It just doesn't happen. Check this out.
Representative Steve Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously these allegations are very troubling. This is my question here. If these ballots were run through multiple times, as you've alleged, and then you said possibly up to 30,000 times, definitely thousands of times being counted. When we examine the poll book and see who voted and we count those numbers, would they then not line up with the total number of votes coming out of Detroit?
Just later. The poll book is completely off.
Off
That
30,000?
I'd say that poll book is off by over 100,000. That poll book. Why don't you look at the registered voters on there? How many registered voters are on there? Do you even know the answer to that?
No, I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom of this here.
Zero. There's zero.
So my question then is, if the
Guess how many? Wait. What about the turnout rate? 120%.
So as you see, she wasn't having it. She knew he was going to try to, tone down what it was that she was saying, when in reality, in Michigan, their voter turnout was 120%, not to mention the number of dead people who voted. As a matter of fact, here's a post from President Trump from one of the X sites, the Skiff, which I do go to the Skiffs too. Trump highlights 2020 election fraud, 17,327 deceased voters counted, with some fabricated birth dates of 1900. Dominion voting machines glitched, rebooted with massive vote dumps putting Biden here. Do you remember in the middle of the night, the reports of it? Because I stayed up that night, and in the middle of the night, everything had stopped. And I think I ended up going to sleep. Maybe it was around 3 or 4. It was 4 in the morning. I went to sleep. I woke up at 6 because I passed out on the couch. Woke up at 6. Joe Biden had got like 300,000 or 400,000 votes all in the middle of the night. And it's like, who's up counting at that time of night? Then you find out that all of the polls closed in the 5 states that had those machines. All the polls shut down and stopped counting at the same time. And then when they all restarted, wait till you see the anomaly. Now, here's what President Trump had to say. Let me see if I can enlarge this some. Nope, as big as it go. Let's see if this will make it any bigger. Testimony from multiple 2020 election workers find 17,327 deceased people votes being counted, some born in 1900s, and claims of massive data dumps of votes done remotely after a glitch occurred. The glitch is the steal, and just one of the many techniques and layers of election fraud. Detroit's TFC Center contained backdated ballots and fabricated birth dates like 1/1/1900 to outright obstruction of observers. The worst was a verified list of 17,327 deceased Michiganders confirmed by obituaries who voted via mail-in ballots sent by Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Sent by the Secretary of State. These voters were over 80, dead before Election Day, yet their ballots were cast. Let's listen to the poll worker.
Every legislator, whether seated in the House or the Senate, whether Democrat or Republican, took an oath to defend the U.S. and state constitutions of the U.S. and Michigan against enemies, both foreign and domestic. Time is of the essence, and now is the time to fulfill that oath. Despite what the media is telling everyone, there are mountains of evidence that voter fraud occurred on a massive scale, the likes of which we've never witnessed in the country.
I'm going to flash forward to 2 o'clock in the morning. At midnight, Trump was ahead 10%, which was an unusually high amount. To about 2 o'clock in the morning, my monitor went down. It totally rebooted. So unless you can tell me there wasn't a data dump, there wasn't a data breach, I don't believe that the numbers were true, because when I went home and woke up, all of a sudden Biden was ahead. We had processed 120,000 votes by midnight out of the 170,000 absentee ballots we were expecting. So I assumed we were missing about 50,000, and all of a sudden Biden was now missing. And the voting had stopped in the middle of the night. So unless you were one of the few processing tables, you would not have seen this rebooting of the laptops.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Sawyer? Senator Tice.
Sorry, there's a theme here. So when you were watching people get thrown out, did you know whether or not they were Republican or Democrat as they were getting booted out?
It depends if they clapped or not. Anytime they clapped, you knew that was a Republican.
Wow. So as you heard that, so we got Michigan again. Now, here's CNN as they're trying to do a report on it, and they're going to accidentally catch this woman stuffing ballot boxes. Check this out.
In Cuyahoga County, Ohio. You can see this woman right here casting her vote. Did you vote for Reagan or Jimmy Carter?
Murder, okay. We don't want to get too personal with people here, but you can see there's actually a traffic.
Folks just can't help themselves. Now we're talking about Detroit, and then I'm gonna get into the real clip where it really like brings you in and breaks it home. Now, this right here is the video. What happened in Detroit? Nobody have been talking about Michigan. We've been talking about Georgia. We've been talking about Arizona, but Michigan and Wisconsin were two where massive fraud took place, but yet the media ignored it. Check this out.
This is inside the TCF Center. Now, the local media said that this never happened. Hattie actually called me on November 4th. She was inside the TCF, and she said, Jim, you won't believe it. I just heard that a van dropped off boxes of ballots in the middle.
See the logo on the side? Definitely Democrat van. And you heard them say that the local media said that this, what's on video that we're looking at, never happened.
Of the night, and she was working inside the TCF that morning. So we put in a request to get this video. It took months, and we got this at Gateway Pundit. We put this up on on our site. We tweeted about it, and that's when we lost our Twitter account, by the way, by putting up this video. There's a lead car, an escort car that comes in. You can see here each time he hands something to the people inside, and then this van drives in, and they actually came in twice. Now, we had local media, one of the top reporters there. I'm not going to mention his name. He said that this never happened. He was there all night. There was no fraud. Nothing happened. So now we have the video of that.
These folks, they just lie all over the place. And then, like we always say, today's hoax, today's Democrat hoax is tomorrow's actual fact. Now, this is the last clip, then I'm going to get into the real deal. But listen to this, what happened in Arizona.
I want to cover is the tabulator machines. We received just a few weeks ago, January of 2023, the system log files from the tabulators that were used in Maricopa County on Election Day, along with the redacted CVR records. Through an analysis, we were able to determine that 250,000 ballot feeds misread by those tabulators. There are approximately 2 tabulators in every polling center, which means there were 446 tabulators with 250,000 voter attempt failures. I want to cover is the tabulator machine.
Wow. So 250,000 in Arizona. Now, this video right here that we're about to watch, this is where it has President Trump, a part of his phone call where he was trying to get to the bottom of what was going on in Georgia. I'm going to play this one in full screen because I want you to fully grasp what's going on in this video. Check this out.
But what about real voter turnout, wildly exceeding the bad actors' predictive modeling and the algorithms used? What then? Election officials will instruct workers to stop counting, and the media will begin to shape public perception.
Election workers in Allegheny County are back to work after pausing counting overnight. Butler County had to press pause on counting ballots. Nevada, meanwhile, has stopped counting votes until 9 a.m. on Thursday.
Good morning, Heather. They did have to press pause overnight. They will be back in a few short hours, expected to resume counting around 8:30 this morning.
Fulton County is now going to stop counting at 10:30 p.m. and will resume their count at tomorrow morning.
They basically stopped counting tonight. They're going to start counting again in a few hours. It's already tomorrow morning, right?
Here's where it gets really bizarre. Fulton County, most populous county, it is Atlanta. They just stopped counting at 10:30 p.m. They stopped counting their absentee ballots. They said they'd pick it up in the morning.
So everyone stopped counting. Now it's time to reboot, create new set points, and gather ballots in the dark of night while observers are sent home to again match the digital subversion. This thing where we've got on election night, we look at the cumulative votes of competing candidates. This is Trump versus Biden. Now, you'll see here the winning candidate at some point is Trump, and he's winning handedly in Wisconsin. And then all of a sudden, you see this massive injection for the losing candidate. That would be Biden. This is what has become known as the F curve or the fraud curve. And it's become meme worthy. This is basically the banner. This is the flag that is flown by all the fraudsters out there. We saw the same F curve in all of the swing states.
I told them how the Georgia runoff election for the 2 senators was going to go. I gave them the model. Republicans are winning. Guess what happened? System went down, came back up, and it flipped. I went to Washington, D.C. on January 4th, 2021, and I met with counsel for Pompeo. How much surprise do you think was on his face? None.
Ruby Freeman, about early in the morning, when the woman took when the whole gang took the stuff out of from under the table, right? For some reason, they put it in 3 times each ballot, and I don't know why.
Now, this is part of the president's call I was telling y'all about, so pay attention for the next minute or so.
All right, so what we're looking at here are two different batches of votes. Scanner 5162, batch 234, image 59, and scanner 5162, batch 235, image 19. And what you can see is that, like on this vote right here, we've got this exact same little tail. Here's the next one that shows, you can see Republican is written there, Republicans written there. This is ballot 61. This is ballot number 2. And then each one of them even has this little dot in the Fannie Willis.
Okay, and you have more of those?
We have the entire batch. There's 62 images in here total, and I didn't even get a chance to go through all of them.
Do you know that? Do you know who those ballots? Do you know who they were made out to? Do you know who they were voting for?
No, not specifically.
Did you ever check?
We did what I described to you earlier.
No. Did you ever check the ballots that were scammed by Ruby Freeman, a known political operative balloteer? Did you ever check who those votes were for?
We looked into that situation that you described.
No, they were 100% for Biden. 100%. There wasn't a Trump vote in the whole group.
They also create phony ballots, and that's a real problem. That's my opinion. They create a lot of phony ballots.
All that's left in the cheat is to now delay reporting, with the media creating a new perception, namely that it is perfectly reasonable to get results days and days after an election was held.
Polls have closed. We should get our first batch of voting numbers in about an hour. That'll be the bulk of the early vote. That should favor Democrats. As the night goes on, we'll get numbers from today's vote. That should favor Republicans. If these races are really as close as people think, we may not be able to even guess who won until we know how many votes were actually cast. So we know how many votes were actually cast.
So there we have it. All of the speculation that the Democrats have been saying was wrong. You remember back in 2020, 2021, I mean, anytime anybody even brought up the election, oh, you were canceled. Social media outlets were shadow banning accounts. They were deleting accounts if you were posting in that you were and you were contesting the 2020 election. And the funny thing about it is now we got video footage. Now we got whistleblowers. And even back then, the media kept saying, oh, President Trump was losing 60 court cases over the election. Not true. What it was is the courts were not allowing President Trump's legal team to even present the evidence.
For those of you that have followed my show for the last 15 years or so, you know that I talked about this at the time of the election. So there's nothing new here to me, but it's probably new to you. Please like and share. See you guys in a few. You have a choice, and you chose...
Please return to the Doc Greene Show. This is Marvin the Martian. When you miss it, you make me very, very angry.
The doctor will see you now.
Oh, yeah, I do see you out there. I'm kind of like Santa Claus. I see you when you're sleeping. You're awake. Anyway, I see you're out there checking out the news right now. And under the heading of revenge is a dish best served cold. Donald Trump has turned the tables on Fannie Willis. That's right, Fannie's got her fanny in a crack right now because Donald Trump is seeking $6.3 million from Fulton County in connection with a dismissed case against him, which was made up and created by former DA Fannie Willis. As you know, Willis indicted Donald Trump under the racketeer, influenced, and corrupt organization laws, which means she just made up a bunch of garbage, threw it on a wall, hoped it would stick. She was pretty certain with the Biden Justice Department they could get away with any sort of injustice. Well, the case was eventually dismissed because, A, there was no evidence, and B, it turned out Fannie Willis was basically using federal funds and state funds in order to pay her lover to take her to different places around the world and be sweet to her. Well, it's all coming home to roost now. The court has ruled there's a significant appearance of impropriety, and her office is completely disqualified. Willis, of course, appealed the decision, but she lost. This paved the way for a motion to recoup $6.3 million in attorney's fees and a motion that cited Georgia law that says when a DA is dismissed, the defendant in the case shall be entitled to a payout. You see, when Democrats elect Democrats or appoint them to federal offices or state offices, and then they do what Democrats do, it ends up coming back and biting the taxpayer on the butt. Now, I've said this before. Not all criminals are Democrats, but all Democrats are criminals. You can be sure of that because they've never met a criminal they didn't love and never met a baby they didn't want to kill. That's just who these people are. In a 3-page motion filed Wednesday by attorney Steve Sadow representing Donald Trump, it included 200 pages of attachments breaking down the costs for which Trump wishes to be reimbursed. They argue that the law mandates such recovery when a prosecuting attorney is disqualified, and we know that's true. Each of the necessary elements has been met. District Attorney Willis was disqualified because of her improper conduct. Therefore, the criminal case was dismissed because it was all made up garbage to begin with, and the motion was filed in a timely manner. The motion noted that Donald Trump's co-defendants can and should also file for reimbursement. Donald Trump adopted the motions for attorney fees and costs filed by his co-defendants. He will do so in a separate pleading after all such motions are filed. The statute said that when the prosecutor is disqualified due to improper conduct, like using state and federal funds to pay for your lover to carry you around the world and feed you good food and be nice to you in different places, well, that's just bad. So any defendant against whom such charges are dismissed shall be entitled to an award, and that would be Donald John Trump. So the case was rightfully dismissed, and now the taxpayer is going to pick up the tab because they allowed a criminal to become the district attorney of Fulton County, Florida. Fani Willis was entirely working with the Biden administrators or whoever is handling President Otto Penn. We know that her lawyer, her boyfriend, actually billed 1,600 hours a week. Add that up. Doesn't quite work, does it? And he went to Washington, D.C. and billed there for working 24 hours a day while he was in Washington, D.C., meeting with whoever was running President Otto Penn. So we hope that Donald Trump gets the fat check because, let's face it, the man deserves it. On an entirely different note, Conan O'Brien, of course, is a well-known comedian. He used to do late night. I don't know about you. I don't even watch network TV, so I really have no idea. But this is to invite you to think about a single word, any word that defines modern liberalism, and then, having thought of that word, go ahead and imagine its effect on comedy. Consider the sage advice of longtime comedian Conan O'Brien, who recently warned his peers that their intense anger toward President Donald Trump, otherwise known as Trump derangement syndrome, has absolutely undermined their craft. He said, "You're being co-opted." According to X on his social media platform, Conan O'Brien made those comments Tuesday during an interview with the Oxford Union. He said, "Some comics just go the route. I'm just going to say F Trump all the time." And that's their comedy. Well, I think now a little bit you're being co-opted because you're so angry. You've been lulled into believing something that's not true. You know, it's like a siren leading you into the rocks. You've been lulled just saying F Trump, F Trump, F Trump, screw this guy. I think you've now lost your best weapon, which is just being funny, and you've exchanged it for uncontrollable anger. And of course, no one should mistake O'Brien for being a Trump supporter. He certainly is not. But he did hit the nail on the head. These anti-American propagandists like Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy Fallon, they have failed miserably because they have substituted Trump derangement syndrome for actual comedy. This might make some people laugh, but not a lot of them. You've got to remember, once again, according to the real surveys that are out there, Democrats now have support levels somewhere around 13%. 13%. We now have 70+% of Americans that support Donald Trump and what he is doing. So if that's all you can do is denigrate Donald Trump, what's that do to your audience? Any person would say, well, things are a little too serious now. I don't need to be funny, O'Brien said. Well, I think if you're a comedian, you always need to be funny. You just have to find a way, and you have to find a way to channel that anger. That is, because good art will always be a great weapon. I'll give you a perfect example. This is only going to work for some of you older guys, but there was a comedian named George Carlin. And George Carlin was a very angry man. Very angry man. But he was funny. And he made his anger funny. He was really good at it. So just keep that in mind. You can be funny. You can be angry and still be funny. So Conan O'Brien said, if you're just screaming and you're just angry, you've lost the best tool in your entire toolbox. So this leads to the key question. Do most modern leftist Marxist comedians even understand what humor really is? And I would say probably no. I'd say they're products of the public indoctrination system. Some of you probably call it public school. Think of the kind of people that have made you laugh in the past, though. Have you ever sensed that any of them lacked the capacity for self-deprecation? And if you had sensed that about them, would you have found them funny? Now, remember the word that you chose to define modern leftist liberalism Marxist? I choose the word smugness. Do smug people who cannot laugh at themselves make good comedians? No, I'd say not. Do TDS-afflicted leftists change the course of history? They could if they listened to Mr. O'Brien, but then they would have to surrender the very thing that they have allowed to define themselves, namely their hatred of Donald Trump. And that qualifies as a task that's easier said than done. After all, at least one mental health professional who sees patients on a regular basis has classified Trump derangement syndrome as a genuine pathology. So in short, Conan O'Brien had it right. But don't expect Colbert and Kimmel and their ilk to suddenly discover comedy. The truth is, we all love comedy. We need to laugh. We need to be able to laugh at ourselves. And yes, maybe even laugh at Donald Trump from time to time. But I got to ask you this. Has anyone ever done more for America than President Donald Trump has? And if you're going to tell me somebody else, I expect you to be able to name some things they've done because I've analyzed it. Ronald Reagan, considered to be the greatest Republican president ever, who won in a landslide, really didn't achieve that much when he was president. He did the best he could, but he didn't achieve much. The Bush, 1 and 2, no, absolutely not. They were both part of the globalist cabal. They did absolutely nothing to advance the cause of America in the world. Only Donald Trump that I can see, going all the way back to Rutherford B. Hayes, only Donald Trump has done the things for America that needed to be done. And I think instead of making jokes about him and saying horrible, vulgar things about him, I think that we ought to pray for him, and I think we ought to enjoy, and I think we ought to thank Yeshua, the mighty God in Christ, that we got this great man in our lifetime. Some of you may remember the pop singer Joy Villa, and she has always been very pro-Donald Trump. Well, she recently penned a lengthy essay for Ebby magazine acknowledging the truth. She said, it's important to acknowledge that I have left the lie of Scientology and become a born-again Christian. She said, I didn't enter Scientology because I was a lost nobody looking for relevance. I entered as a driven, faith-raised woman searching for truth, healing, and purpose. I was raised a Christian. I love Jesus, and Scientology told me that I could keep him. But that lie kept me inside for 15 years. She said right off the bat, it's worth noting that the idea of having Jesus and Scientology in your life is a blatant lie. It is an anachronism. It is a paradox. In fact, the Bible makes this abundantly clear. Galatians 1 and 8, the Apostle Paul plainly states, but even if we or an angel from heaven should preach a gospel different than the one that we preach to you, let them be under God's curse. That would be anathema. In Matthew 6:24, Jesus said, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You can't serve both God and money. Yes, the Matthew passage is explicitly talking about money, but it's actually incredibly appropriate if we're speaking about Scientology. Numerous critics and former members of Scientology have often spoke out against the bizarre obsession with money in this, we'll call it a pseudo-religion. And Joy Villa's experience was no different. She said, by the time I'd left, I'd already donated them nearly $2 million. But I'd given my time, my labor, my voice, my platform, and my influence. And I lived at the Celebrity Center in Hollywood for years and trained at the highest levels. I became one of their most visible success stories as a successful actress and singer. Joy Villa acknowledged that she experienced career heights that most artists can only dream of. Just one glaring catch: Scientology took credit for all of that. Every achievement was not attributed to God, not to talent, not to perseverance, but to loyalty to the organization. My success became nothing more than propaganda. My life became marketing. It's a control system, she explained. Working 12-hour days, mentally depleted, spiritually numb, emotionally unraveling, I was deeply depressed. In fact, I was so depressed, I did not want to live anymore. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live. I was spiritually bankrupt. She made it crystal clear that Christianity is what works. Scientology cannot coexist with Christianity, just like nothing else can really coexist with Christianity. You either love Jesus or you don't. Hey, see you guys on Monday.
That's all, folks.